Good evening, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are and whatever frame of mind you may be in. My name is Samuel Davis III, and I am the host of Uplift Our Community podcast, powered by Bridge Visions. Today, we're talking about something every one of us has experienced. There have been moments when we knew something wasn't right, but we stayed silent. Maybe it was in our family, maybe at work, maybe at church, maybe in our community, maybe online. The question isn't simply, why do people stay silent? The question is, why do good people stay silent? Is it fear? Is it wisdom? Is it exhaustion? Or is it because speaking up sometimes comes with the cost? Today isn't about judging people for being quiet. It's about exploring when silence protects peace and when silence allows problems to continue. Our goal isn't to tell you what you think. Our goal is to ask questions that help all of us think more deeply, listen more carefully, and leave this conversation better than when we entered it. So grab your coffee, invite someone into the conversation, and let's uplift our community. Boom, here's the guys here. Welcome, Robin. Welcome, Gordon. How's your week been going for you, Robin?
Not too bad. Just actually getting a lot of things done, getting a lot of practice done. So I have to say 2 thumbs up.
Any work with your horses this week? Anything in particular?
Yeah, constantly working with the horses. Getting the trimmer coming out today, so she's going to come out and trim the horses. I did some training yesterday, training on my landlady's horses. Yeah,
okay.
It's the good work. I don't want to. I have other ideas about my horse work. But I would be wasting this platform's time on that. I would love to. I would love to pick your brain, both of you, Gordon and Samuel, offline about some ideas that I've had, and but that's not for this particular podcast.
Okay. Well, we look forward to that then. That's only something we can do. What's going on, Mr. Gordon Chavez, community builder? How's life been treating you?
Yeah, community builder. That's right. I've been busy with car stuff. So, one car after another is in the shop getting this done on it, that done on it. And we're getting past the big stuff. Now it's kind of smaller stuff. But yeah, it just seems like it just, when it rains, it pours. Car troubles, car issues, car maintenance, all of that.
I hate car maintenance. You know what the funny thing is? We sit back and we talk about it as Robin's bringing up horses. We think about it, horsepower. You sit back and it was all based upon a horse. Everything was relative to a horse. You got a whatever, what do they call those Hellcats? What, 500 horsepower or something like that, and everybody's relating it in terms of horses. And here it is, Robin, you got a horse or horses that you're dealing with, man. And you see where we came from back in the day when it was horses everywhere. Look where we're at now. Can't stand sometimes when my car goes out. But that sucks. Anyway, want to jump into our conversation here. I'm gonna bring this up with you, Robin. This is our first question. Why do good
people sometimes choose to stay silent when they know something isn't right? Well, it's difficult. Good people. I should only talk about what I know. I should just shut the fuck up about good people. I ain't one of them. But
you don't think you're one of them?
I'm not one of those good people. I should just talk about what I know, which is bad people. I got no. But the thing about good people, and I think the biggest reason is experience, personal experience. So what happens is, you know how teenagers just won't shut the fuck up. And the older you get, the more quiet you get. And I think that's basically a result of a lifetime of beatdowns. So, and there's two kinds of a beatdown. One is that, teenager speaks up and you just like, be quiet there, young guns. You don't know what you're talking about. And so that's your first beatdown. And you get a couple of those beatdowns. And a couple times a young teenager will speak up. Either everyone will tell him to shut the hell up, or he'll discover that he's wrong. So he gets punished either way. He either gets punished by the people around him, or he gets punished by the circumstances, by the simple fact that he was probably wrong when he opened his mouth. You get a lifetime of that. Over time, you start to learn, hey, don't open your mouth, right? Unless two things are in effect. And one is that you're right, and two, that you're effective. And 9 times out of 10, speaking up is so ineffective that I think good people have, when a good person decides not to speak when he knows he's right, is usually because he strongly suspects that it's not going to do any good. And so it falls into that category of pick your battles, right? And when you pick your battles, you got to pick, there's 2 criteria, right? They got to be big enough to matter and small enough to win. Otherwise, don't pick that battle. If it's not small enough that you're going to win that, don't pick it. And if it ain't big enough to matter, again, don't pick it. Right? And that's basically my view on it.
All right. Wow. That was very good. You know, Robin, what I love about you, you give me, when you start these conversations, I ask you a question, the way that you start talking in your response, I start thinking of other questions of formulating where I'm going to go from there, and it goes even deeper. And I love that about you. You bring it out to me because you bring out 4 different aspects to everything that we bring up. It's amazing. Love it. Love it. Gordon.
Yeah, I have to say that when I first read the question, I thought about my boys, and I thought about how sometimes I gotta kind of just let them learn their lessons, and sometimes I want to say something, sometimes because sometimes they're just going to be like, yeah, but Dad, I know what I'm doing. I got this. I got it under control, whatever. And then, depending, again, similar to what Shen says.
Then you just get out the popcorn.
Yeah, exactly. Get out my chair and some popcorn. Like, all right, let's watch.
You go, boy.
Yeah. And
you call your wife, hey, honey, watch this.
Yeah, check this out. Come over here, get a seat. And it depends how serious the issue is, right? If it's a big thing, I'm going to try to step in and hopefully help. But if it's just a good potential lesson where they're going to learn something, I'm all for them learning a lesson. Because when they were younger, I would probably protect them more than I probably should have, to some degree, right? I didn't let them learn enough lessons, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, nowadays, my youngest is 12, the next 2 are 18 and 20, and my eldest is 25, and so now it's like Shen said, let's get some popcorn and have a little laugh. Let's watch this.
You got 9 more fingers.
Yeah, exactly. What's the worst that could happen?
There we go. And this is I have to go back to my other comment because again, Robin, sometimes your answers, you pre-answer some of the questions that I already have coming, because here we go. This is question number 2. Question number 2 is silence always agreement, or can silence sometimes be wisdom? That was answered by you earlier because of the way that you answered your question. And yeah, I just want to answer this part right here because silence can be wisdom, and knowing when to choose your battles is exactly one of the things I learned working in the prison system. There's a certain time where you got to watch the guys are going at it, and you just got to let them be. Let them argue it out, because you know what? If they don't get it out here and in the yard, this is gonna get it gets into their head, and then they go back into their cell, and then they're pissed off at that guy. You gotta let them, because he never got a chance to shoot it out. He never got a chance to get that release that he needed. And you got to sit back and you got to kind of temper things like, okay, He's not fighting. I don't see a shank in his hands. So they're just blowing off a little steam. Let me let him blow it off a little bit longer, a little bit longer. Now, somebody just walking in and not knowing that we're coming, hey, man, what's going on? There's some craziness going on. But no, I'm running it. And I can tell you right now, they're just blowing off steam. That's the wisdom that I've garnered over the years of working with those incarcerated individuals and seeing how they interact and knowing when this guy's getting ready to pop off. So, yeah. Gordon, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think part of it, if you're in a leadership role, sometimes, I think of it when I think of like team building or working in a group or working in a team. It's similar but different from what you're talking about with your work experience, where sometimes, it is just a matter of just letting somebody else go through that experience, for example, or even let them fail a little bit, but sometimes you never know. You might learn something along the way too. They might actually know something that you didn't see coming, and you're like, oh wow, they actually did know what they were doing or did know what they're talking about. But I think that if you're in a leadership role with a group or a team and you feel like you know how something needs to be done, but you're delegating it, for example, and you're watching somebody else go about it, and you're like, oh, here we go, right? Sometimes they need to learn that it was wrong through failing, and versus me just telling them that's not the way to do it or whatever. But then also sometimes the whole script is flipped, and I need to learn that maybe they know something that I don't know in that particular case, and through letting them do it, I might learn something myself. So it kind of goes both ways.
There you go. All right. Robin, I'm going to jump to this next one because you had already answered this one. So here we go. Have you ever stayed silent and later wish you had spoken?
Well, before I talk about that, your previous question was a two-part question. We only dealt with one side of it. The first part of that question is that silence always agreement. Or is silent ever agreement, or is it wisdom? And I will say this, first of all, silence only very rarely is silence agreement. It's almost never agreement. 95% of the time, 98% of the time, silence is disagreement. Because if you are in agreement, there's no reason to stay silent. And you go, right on, bud. Yeah, fuck yeah. Right? But when you're in disagreement, you do stay, when you stay silent, silence is a disagreement. If you guys say, hey, I love watching my kids make mistakes, it's kind of funny. We all say, hey, Pop, we all chimed in. We all chimed in, right? There's no reason to be silent. There's no backlash. There's no repercussions. There's no cost. There's no risk to speaking out when you're in agreement. But when you're in disagreement, you either say something or you remain silent. And so that answers that part of the question. Now, have I ever stayed silent later, wished I had spoken? Very, very rarely. I can't think of a time. The opposite is almost always true. Right? The opposite is true. I have often, just even going to a party and having a conversation with my wife's friends, and then I give them back and I go, God, I wish I hadn't spoken so much. So the opposite is almost always true. And this has almost never happened. To stay silent later, wished I had spoken. Because even if I should have spoken out against something that maybe I didn't agree with, like I said, remaining silent is in itself a form of protest, right?
Okay. Gordon?
I would say that for me as a kid, that was all the time. I was always silent. I didn't really say much. And not necessarily all the time that I wanted to say something or that I wish I would have said something, but I was always silent. Like most of the time, I just kept my opinion to myself. there were a few times as a kid that I kept my opinion to myself and then thought I should have said something. Then I started thinking about like my marriage, for example, right? And I started thinking like, okay, you know, marriage is a tough thing, right? And it's a challenge. It's a challenge and a blessing all at the same time. And I think that in the early years of my marriage, I probably was the opposite, where I said stuff that I probably shouldn't have said, right or wrong. If I was wrong, I definitely should have said something. But there were probably times that I was right where it really wasn't even worth saying, even if I was right, right? Because the repercussions, whether you're right or wrong, can be worse than just being right in the first place, right? And like that saying, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy, right? And now, you know, I've been married, what, like 23 years now, and now I'm going back the other way. Now I'm kind of just letting stuff go. I'm picking my battles. I'm trying to be more wise. And so it's been kind of like this bell curve. It was at the bottom, then it went up, then it was, you know, if that makes sense.
Okay. I got a comment here. So Rail Shabazz here says he's cheering in agreement, and staying slimy when words need to be exchanged is completely different, and I disagree. Silence is always acceptance when words need to be spoken, maybe with knowledge and understanding of the topic. That might be with what you're talking about, Robin. What do you think about that?
Silence is always acceptance. Yeah, silence is acceptance. Acceptance is not agreement.
Okay.
Right. So if I stay silent, I don't agree with you. I might accept it. So I agree with him. He's right. Yeah, silence is always acceptance. You're just going to put up with it. Right. But that doesn't mean I agree with it.
Well, no, true. That's true. Next question we have right here is what fears most often keep people from speaking the truth? What fears? So, as an example, when I say what fears, there are things that I come into when I come into conversations with people, and I don't know necessarily when I walk into a room. And I hate to sit back here and throw race in this again, but it's just I have to do it because when I walk into a room, that's one of the first things you're gonna recognize when I'm in the room, whether I'm the only black person in the room, or maybe there's a couple of us in the room. But sometimes you hear somebody say something that is totally off course. I walk into a room, let's just say, and I'm not saying I walk into MAGA conventions or anything like that, but I would walk into, let's just say I were to happen to walk into a convention or a place where they're throwing the offhand comments, and I'm sitting back in here and that's just me by myself, and I look around and I say, yeah, you know what? I'm not jumping in that. I am definitely not going to jump into that. They are wrong, and that's a bold-faced lie, and they know it. I'm going to let this one go. So there's that part of that wisdom that you spoke about earlier, Robin, that you have to keep in mind. And also, like I said, for me as a black man in America, it's like I always have to watch my mouth sometimes. And that's the part that really kind of is frustrating, and why we're here, to have these kind of conversations that people understand. Lots of times I don't say things because it can turn a simple conversation into a blowout. Not that I'm afraid of a blowout. I actually enjoy some blowouts, but there's a time and a place for those blowouts. And that's kind of my answer. I don't know if that gave the answer, but those fears most often keep people from speaking the truth. The fear of just a blowout for me. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Oh, right. I thought you were going to point to one of us.
Nah.
Well, I think it always boils back down, and I didn't come up with this. This is Neil deGrasse Tyson was the one that I got this from. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're right. You got to be effective.
Mm.
So you can sit there and talk about a blowout. Now, I'm in my 60s, and I've had plenty of blowouts. Never once, never, ever once have I had a blowout where at the end of the blowout, the other person said, "Oh, shit, you're right. Damn, I never looked at it that way." Right?
Right.
What actually happens more than that is that somebody, the person you're actually speaking to, digs their heels in even deeper. And this is a phenomenon that has actually been documented in psychological research.
Mm.
If you have an opinion, let's say, you know, A is bigger than B, right? Two things. Item A is bigger than item B, right? And you give them evidence that they are correct, they will increase their confidence in their answer, in their opinion. If you give them evidence to the contrary, it will give them even greater confidence in their original opinion.
Hmm.
So you sit there and you tell somebody who thinks the earth is flat, right? And you give them evidence that it's round. That actually makes them even more confident that the earth is flat.
Hmm.
So you can have a blowout, sure. Speak up. That's great for your ego. That's great for your peace of mind. That's great for your, like, I stood up for myself. But that doesn't change that guy's mind.
Hmm.
And if it's not going to change his mind, I'm not going to waste my breath. Well, I lie. I am going to waste my breath because,
Okay.
I'm a mouthy motherfucker. But at the end of the day, I always look back on that and go, that was a complete waste of time, effort, and energy. And more importantly, a waste of my credibility.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
It's the cost of my credibility, because later on when something really important comes up, like, hey, don't operate the handsaw in that manner because you'll cut your fucking finger off. That teenager may not listen to me because I had a blowout with him yesterday about something that didn't really matter that much.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right?
Good point. Good point. Gordon,
So,
you want to go off on that? Respond with that one?
No, I think that's a great statement. It's like, what do you want as a result from that blowout, right? You want things to go your way, and if I understood Shen, it's like that whole equal and opposite reaction, right? You push hard, you're right or wrong, and you could be obviously right, and people will push back harder just because you're pushing in the first place. And so I've experienced that many times.
Hmm.
I think that, regarding the question, what do people fear? If I remember the question right, the first thing that I thought of was, what other people are going to think. The world is filled with fear of what other people think. What are they going to think about me if I say this? What are they going to think about me if I speak my mind? And more recently, I feel like we've been seeing videos online of people being bullied, young people, middle school, high school, and all of that, being bullied. And there's always people standing around that will not do anything. And it's not that they're with the bullies, it's that the bullies are the ones that seem to have the most support. So they don't want to go against all of that necessarily. And they might feel bad for the young kid that's getting beat up or whatever. But I feel like that fear of what is everybody going to think if I go against the grain in this situation where most people seem to be going this way is a big thing. There was something else, but I forgot, so I'll let it go so that we can keep going. But there was something. If I think about it, I'll jump in.
well, I want to say one other thing about you just mentioned with the bully thing. There's a difference between speaking out and having a verbal blowout and having a discussion about something. It's another about physical intervention. Right? So if you see little kids, the kids in the schoolyard and then one kid's bullying another, physical intervention is not the same thing. I don't think we're not talking about that necessarily. I mean, if we are, then let's talk about that, right? So that comes back down to, is it effective? Physical intervention is effective. I mean, assuming you've got the power, right? You've got the strength to intervene and physically intervene and say, stop doing that, right? Then yeah, absolutely. Physical intervention is critical. But a verbal, that's difficult, because one of the things is that there are some people that should speak out in many situations. The three of us probably never been in that situation. But I just read a book about childhood sexual abuse where the mother pretty much knew what was going on, but was always trying to convince herself that it wasn't, and that it wasn't that bad, or it was going to stop soon, and never really spoke out and never really intervened. Intervened once in the beginning, but then later on did not. Right. And, the intervention should have happened. And those are the people that we should talk to, because they have the real answers to these questions, these burning questions that we have right now. I don't like the way you said, Mexicans should be, mowing the lawn or some shit like that. Or, women aren't, are only good for cooking and cleaning in the kitchen, or women are lousy drivers, right? Some stupid shit like that. Yeah, you can sit there and go, oh, come on. I don't think they're all terrible. I'm worse than most of them, right? But when we talk about things where there's abuse, like you said, bullying in the schoolyard, there's some physical abuse that requires some actual physical intervention. Like you need to get in between that and stop that from continuing on. If you have the power. And I don't judge people who don't, because they have, I'm sure they have really good reasons. I would like to know what those reasons are, but I'm not going to judge them until I hear their side of it.
Again, here we go with the prison stories again. That was exactly what I was telling you earlier about. I had to sit back and judge. You watch what's going on, and you have to. There are things that, because this actually leads into the next question, which is what you were saying. When does keeping the peace become keeping the problem alive? And physically, I've had to go in between and stop things, because it was just, first, I would never do it as a civilian. I would never do it, but I had the power of the uniform, the badge, and a baton with me. You know what I'm saying? I could handle that situation then. Right now, you would never see the things that I had to do, seeing someone in a physical altercation, and I had to jump into it, spent a lot of therapy getting out of my system, because there were things I wouldn't do now, but I did at the time, because they were someone that I worked with. They were under my care, and it was that was my responsibility. I'm hoping I'm answering that question with how you're saying that, Robin, because keeping that peace and keeping that, sometimes there are guys that I said, you know what? Yeah, he need to get his butt beat, and yeah, I'd watch it for a minute, then I'd jump in on it. Sure. The guy was talking too much. So yeah, he deserves a little bit of a beating, but yeah, that level of hurt that hurts one person, it shouldn't happen at all. But yeah, what I think is clean is dirty to you, and when you look at people in that situation, it's just no good. It's just no good. There are a lot of things I learned working in the prison system that I cannot apply outside here as a civilian now, that work hand in hand with what we're talking about right now. Gordon?
No, I'm good. I think I agree with everything that's being said.
Okay. All right. Next question here. Have social media and cancel culture made people more hesitant to express honest opinions? How about that, Gordon?
Yeah. I think it's very similar to a bullying situation where, you have 3 or 4 kids bullying one, and some bystander, again, doesn't want to jump in and defend the kid, because those 3 or 4 could turn on them also. And there is a difference, between verbal and physical. I think for me, I've always been bigger than kids my age. So me saying something was oftentimes enough to split something up without physically getting too into it as a kid. But I think cancel culture and social media. So social media is interesting because it has a way of creating more transparency, but at the same time, the people showing what's happening are only showing what's in that frame, right? You're not seeing everything. You don't know what's going on. And as far as like cancel culture goes, I think it's too easy to just cancel somebody. I think it's too easy that if somebody makes a mistake, or if they're they're bad people, or they have bad habits or bad traits or bad attributes, whatever you want to call it, it's still, I think it's too easy to just dismiss it and say we're not down with that person anymore, whatever. Because I don't think that necessarily fixed the problem. That just sets it aside and says, yeah, it hurts that person, right? They lose deals, and you can name probably a few celebrities that have lost billions and billions of dollars of sponsorships and partnerships and endorsements and all of that due to cancel culture. But does that really change their mind about maybe what they said or what they did, So I don't know that it fixes the problem. But I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking about the two. And maybe I need to kind of process them a little bit.
Robin, response to that? Have you ever been canceled? Before you answer, have you ever been canceled?
I don't even know really how that works or what that is. Like, everyone talks about it. That's like trading in futures. It's a financial term. Everybody uses it. Everybody's heard it. Everybody might have even said it once. Nobody fucking knows what it really is. What the fuck is a future? How do you fucking buy a future? Right? And so cancel culture, let's look at this question. Has social media and cancel culture made people more hesitant to express honest opinions? God fucking, I wish it would. But most people won't shut the fuck up. If anything, it's made people even more vocal. If you get on TikTok and Facebook and Facebook Shorts and Reels and YouTube, ain't nothing but people on there expressing their honest opinions, right? Yeah. So I don't agree that it has made people more hesitant. If anything, it's made it. When you cancel, when somebody talks about being canceled, they talk about it even more. I mean, you want to make someone famous, cancel them.
Wow. Wow. I hear that. Gordon, response to that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the statement, or I don't know if it's a quote or what, that any publicity is good publicity, right? But I think that if you're in a position or of a mindset of wanting to say, okay, so and so said the Ed word, that's not good. Like, I would say most of the people, at least in the circles that I run with, would say that's not good. But saying, okay, forget about them, remove them, let's not talk to them, let's not look at them, let's not do business with them, all of that stuff. I think it has its role. Like, I'm not going to say continue to buy jeans from a jean company that just did something sexist on a commercial, right? I'm not going to put my money there. But at the same time, just removing them doesn't fix the problem, right? It almost teaches them how to adjust and continue. And now they know what they shouldn't say later, even though they still believe it, for example, maybe. And then as far as like social media and people speaking more of their so to speak mind. I don't like. I'm not trying to listen to people ranting about crazy nonsense, but at the same time, I'd rather it be known than them be a closet this or a closet that, and not know until the very last moment that they actually don't like these people, or they're not about this or they're not about that. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I'd rather know my neighbor was racist than at the last moment they do something or whatever to my wife because she's brown. I'd rather know it at the beginning. And, I'm open to having a friendly relationship with somebody who's racist, depending on what the other attributes are, and it's a gray line with like how many people I can be friends with if they're those kinds of people. in general, or other types of, Robin talked about, sexual abuse with children. That I don't see myself being able to be a friend with somebody like that, because that just anything where kids are being abused is just I can't deal with. But other than that, I'm open-minded to disagreeing with people about things and still trying to build a relationship out of it. I don't know.
Okay. This is the next question. I'm going to kind of give you a little story behind this one for me. I guess this is going to be prison day for you stories. Have you ever changed because someone cared enough to tell you the truth? There was a period of time we had, they had picked up maybe 25 Dominicans off the international waters in the United States, and they brought them into the federal prison system. And these guys were talking, and the Dominicans, they were talking, and every day I would come in, I say, hey, what's up, Dominicanos? What's up, Dominicanos? And I would kind of say what's up to the guys, because they didn't speak English, and they're very, really animated the way they talk. And I was, kind of keeping it light between them. This guy came from the Mexican mafia guy. He came up to me, he said, hey, Davis, hey, cut that out, Davis. Keep saying that stuff, man. I'm going to take care of them for you. Keep saying that. And I was like, whoa. He was not joking. He meant it. He didn't want me giving anybody any extra shine. He didn't want to hear nothing. And at that point, I realized I put those guys in danger just by me going, what's up to them guys, showing a little bit of niceness to them. It wasn't going to go for some of the other people in there. And I remember when he looked at me, at one point, you're looking him dead into the eye, and it's like, you know what? I just looked at him, heard what he said, processed it, and walked away. Didn't speak to him like that after that. And that was a case where someone that cared enough to tell me the truth. So I'm asking you that, Robin. Have you ever changed because someone cared enough to tell you the truth?
Oh, constantly. I mean, the whole reason you have me on this podcast is if you think that I have some valid opinions and that I have some wisdom to share. It all came from someone else. I didn't invent this shit, right? All through my whole life, from childhood on up, people tell me the truth. Teachers, parents, uncles, aunts, friends, relatives, supervisors, managers, every time they tell me something, that rings true, I've changed, and many times. That's why I'm on this podcast. I would imagine, right? Now, the people that we're talking about, as far as whether or not we should speak to them about certain things, like racists and all that, I don't really think they're going to change. But that's a flaw in my character, right? One time I went to a seminar. I don't know if it was a seminar or a talk or something. They had a guest speaker, and the guest speaker was a woman who came in to talk about rape. I think it was in college or whatever. And she came up and she says, the first question I like to ask is, how many of you believe that we could eradicate rape in the universities? And nobody stood up. And she says, and that's why it'll never happen. Because until you believe it can happen, it's not going to happen. Wow. Okay. And I was like, holy shit, because I thought, I was all cynical, like, you'll never eradicate it completely. It's always going to be there. It's always, and I'm like, yeah, keep thinking like that and you'll be right. You'll make it true. Right. So are we ever going to completely 100% eradicate child abuse? If you say no, then you're guaranteeing that it will never happen. Right. Wow. And so when I say I don't like to speak up because most of the time I don't think it's going to be effective, that's a flaw in my character. Right. Something that I have to change as a result, by the way, of this conversation, of me thinking through things. Right. Now, I have to be very careful about how I speak now that I think about it, because earlier I said, when you try to say something to somebody and you disagree with them and you give them evidence to the contrary of what they're thinking, they're going to dig their heels in deeper, and you'll make it worse. So I have to be very careful about how I say things and how I posit my expressions in order to avoid creating the exact opposite of what I'm trying to create.
Okay. Gordon?
So I was thinking with this question, I was thinking about something that actually is kind of recent. And so I am out in the community and I do a lot of community work. I do volunteering with a couple different nonprofit organizations. And one of them is a community center called Lived Experiences. And this community center is in a very Latino neighborhood. It's run by a Latino community member. It's, most of the 90% of the people that go there and hang out there and work there or whatever are Latino. And in all honesty, probably 75% of the time it's mostly Spanish being spoken. And so I've been hanging out there ever since it opened about a year ago, a little over a year ago, volunteering and helping out wherever I can, doing all this stuff. And I recently, say in the last month, maybe a little longer, but recently, somebody told me that some of the community members thought I was a police officer. And so, and the reason why they thought I was a police officer is because, I'm 6'4", 265 pounds. I'm white, I'm middle-aged, and I was there just kind of hanging out, and I would help out, the director with different things and whatnot. And so they thought that maybe I was actually a police officer helping out, but maybe more so spying and trying to see if anything happens, or, I don't know what they thought. And so I think to some extent, the person that thought it would have never came to me and said that. But the person that actually told me it is somebody that cares enough to say it, so that not part of it was to be funny, and another part was for me to realize how I project myself, for me to realize, what's going through other people's head when I'm there, amongst the people of that community. Being that I don't look like any of the rest of them, right? Physically and appearance wise. And so what as far as the change part goes, is what I need to do. And what I'm currently trying to do is I'm trying to be more outgoing, and I'm trying to go to people and introduce myself and speak Spanish, so that there's a level of comfort, and learn people's names. I have to work hard at remembering people's names, and so I just have to put in a little extra effort, because the supremacy that has been in this country for so long, I think that's part of the reasoning as to why people would look at me and say, this guy 6'4", 260 pounds, he must be a cop. What's he doing here at the community center, hanging out, watching everybody doing stuff and whatnot? And so, like I said, that's something that somebody told me in confidence, right? Not to make anybody feel bad. And I think I need to use that as a positive to try to be more outgoing and get to know more of the people there on a very low, friendly, I don't know how else to say it, intimate level, I guess, and just really get to know people better than because my nature is that I will work on a project, sit in the corner, and not necessarily talk to everybody. But more recently, I have been, and when I go, a lot of the people will know my name now, and will say hello and all of that. And so that has changed, because I don't want people to feel uncomfortable while I'm there, And so that has been something that's recent that has happened that I think fits this question.
This next question, that's pretty good what you just said, because I want to ask you. This next question is, what kind of environment encourages honest conversation instead of fear? And I want to jump off and start off with that one by saying why we're here. Robin, we definitely are here for your opinions, but this is why we are here, to have these honest conversations that a lot of people don't talk about. You don't sit back there and have these conversations. I would never have thought you looked like a cop, but then again, hey, you sure never get that from me. I would never get that, but I could understand how that could be could make you ineffective in your work in the nonprofit sector, trying to help people out. I could see how that would help, especially when there's someone whispering, hey, is he? So yeah. So the question that I want to ask is, what kind of environment, other than this conversation that we're having right here, because this is why we're doing it, but what kind of environment encourages honest conversation instead of fear? I'll start with you, Robin.
Well, first of all, this question poses a false dilemma, right? So, a false dilemma is, as you probably know, is when there's more than two options, but it is presented as if there's only two options, right? So, typical example
Define this,
of
please. Define that, please.
Well, an example is you're either anti-abortion or you're for murdering children, right? That's a false dilemma. Right? There's more than just those two options, right? There's the same thing here. It's like, honest conversation instead of fear. It could be instead of something other than fear, right? So then the kind of environment that encourages honest conversation, in my honest opinion, tends to be one that is not when you're in circumstances where you sometimes are under some kind of impression that, there's usually missing information. First of all, is there a height requirement on this podcast? Because I'm not even 6 feet tall, right? So, and I'm about sick of you guys talking about how goddamn tall y'all are.
Hey, that's why we got you here.
All right. I'm 5'14", okay?
hasn't been a single week where y'all haven't. Oh, and by the way, I'm 6'8". All right, great, thank you.
Good for you.
What happened to Benji? That's what really happened to him. So no, I just had a conversation with somebody. I went to a party about a week ago or a couple days ago, and there was a lady. Gordon and I have something in common, by the way, Sam. He is an undercover Latino.
That's
right. And I am an undercover Chinese person. Right. So Latinos don't know he's Latino, don't know he speaks Spanish, and Chinese people don't know I'm Chinese, and they don't know I speak Chinese. And that opens a whole can of worms, and it opens up a lot of honesty. Right? And that honesty is not because they think they're safe. It's not because they think they're going to be accepted. It's just how they really are. And you get a lot of weird shit from people based on their ignorance of the true facts of the situation. Right? Latinos say things to him that they would never say to another Latino, or probably wouldn't even say if there's other Latinos around, because they think they're talking to a white man. Right? And Chinese people fucking treat me like a fucking idiot. Right? And I realized, wow, that's how we treat white people? Like they're fucking dumbasses? Right? I mean, when a Chinese person speaks to a white person, it's almost like they're talking to a fucking 12-year-old. Like, it's okay. There's no way you would understand this. Let me explain it to you and dumb it down as far as possible, because I know you can barely fucking read, and we know you can't count, right? And God forbid you try to write any fucking code, right? Right? I mean, that's the way, and I never really thought about it that way until they start talking to me that way. Like, look, I can read, I can count, I do know write code. Why are you speaking to me like I'm a fucking idiot? Oh yeah, that's right. You think I'm white?
You know what it is too, though. It's also that Chinese Exclusion Act that got them. That they're like, hey, remember what happened when we messed with you guys way back?
Stop, Sam. Not a Chinese person alive today knows what the fuck you're talking about. unless they were raised in San Francisco and specifically taught that in a San Francisco school.
Okay. All
right.
All right.
None of the Chinese go, the Chinese are everywhere in the world. We're the majority of the people. Mandarin is the most widely spoken language on the planet. We don't think we're minorities. We just think we're smarter than all y'all. Just because there happens to be a tiny, tiny handful of white people living in America that don't really fucking matter and buy all our products and can't even plunge their own toilet without calling a Mexican, can't write their own code without calling a Chinese man, can't do any math without calling a Korean, right? Just treat them like children. They're not that big a deal. So there's no Chinese Exclusion Act. We don't give a fuck about that, right? Right. But here's the thing: the answer to the question, the honesty comes from the fact that they don't fucking know they don't know the full circumstances. And I'm being honest right now, and I may be full of shit. I may be wrong about half the things I say, and my honesty is coming out of my ignorance, right? Maybe I don't know the full story, right? Maybe that woman was, she fucking was a babysitter for a bunch of fucking white people or some shit, and the kids were dumbasses, right? Who the fuck knows? But, you get that a lot. And so the environment that encourages honest conversation is usually ignorance, right? You don't really know the full situation. And so you start speaking your actual mind. And let's not forget that just because you're being honest doesn't mean you're telling the truth. Right?
There you go. That right there is a great point. Gordon, how about you? Do you have any comments on that, what he just got you saying? Or the conversation at hand?
A lot, yeah. I am an undercover Mexican, first of all, right? And I think that
I'm sorry, I know what he's talking about. It's fucking crazy.
Hold up, is Gordon there? Hope we didn't lose him. Okay, we got you back. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. My camera was acting funny. So I tend to be in environments that are mostly brown. Whether it's hanging around. Well, first of all, hanging around with family. I am, for people that may not have seen this before, I'm half white and half Mexican. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and every time people see pictures of us, they're like, "What are you doing in that picture?" Because I'm the lightest one, right? And then beyond that, my white mom doesn't have any siblings, so I don't have. And on the East Coast, I have like cousins and distant cousins that are not brown. But here in California, the rest of the family is brown, and then my wife is very brown, and so her family is very brown. So, and then in the community, I'm usually in Latino environments, or I'm in very diverse or Samoan and diverse environments. And so, in the Latino environments is probably where I think that I'm intimidating to people. I think that people from Latino backgrounds, and a lot of it has to do with their age.
Let me guess, because you're 6'4".
5'16", not 6'4", 5'16". No, it's. I think I first really saw it mostly during our current president's first administration and all the immigration stuff that was going on, where people just didn't want, if they didn't have to, they wouldn't even go outside. They wouldn't go to the grocery store. Kids wouldn't be playing at the parks and things like that. And then, you know, if I'm serving with a nonprofit that serves mostly Latino communities, then I'm amongst people that are not sure how to act in front of me. And I try to figure out ways to make people feel comfortable. But unfortunately, until I actually talk to them and introduce myself and try to make them feel more comfortable, it's hard at first, you know, first sight. I'm not necessarily making people feel comfortable. And it's not my height, it's my skin tone. And so, you know, people are wondering, you know, does he work for the government? Is he a cop? Is he ICE? Is he this? Is he that? Right? And if anything, even if he's not, is he going to call them if we don't act right? If we don't do the right thing, is he going to start making phone calls or whatever? Right? And so, I don't know if that has to do with the question necessarily, other than I think that's not honest conversation. I think that I try to go more recently. I try to go above and beyond to help people feel more comfortable, so that I can get an honest conversation out of them, so that they don't feel that I'm this or that or whatever they think I might be until they know me. And so that is part of what I get. And so people are very, at first introduction, very hesitant. And I all the time I get it, where I get people tell me, well, I didn't know you spoke Spanish. If I knew you spoke Spanish, I would have talked to you more often. So it's, you know, that's the experiences that I get out of that. And I think that what leads to an environment that encourages honest conversation is a safe environment where, you know, people, you have to get beyond that superficial, how's the weather, how are the Dodgers doing, you know, the Chargers, or if you're in the Bay Area, the Giants and the Niners and the, you know, Oakland and all of them. You have to get past that and really get to know people on a deeper level. And I think that leads to having a safer environment and more honest conversation, maybe. But I think that when you first meet anybody, regardless of my personal experiences, anybody and everybody, the first time you meet them, to some degree, you're only meeting their representative. They're not 100% just because they don't necessarily know you on that level. The first couple times you meet them, it's not until maybe the third or fourth time that people will start to open up a little bit more. And then it depends on the questions that you ask. If you're just asking superficial questions, that's one thing. But if you ask people, you know, what do you do on your time off? Do you have a family? Do you have kids? Do you this? What are your actual interests, and what do you spend time doing when you're not, say, working, or when you're not volunteering at this place or whatever? And then people will open up and say, well, I actually like this, or I like that. So I don't know if that all makes sense, but
no, it does. You know, the one thing that you said that actually opened up a whole lot for me was making people feel comfortable. That statement alone, it kind of gets me right here, because, you know, I get tired of making people feel comfortable around me. I get so upset with trying to make people feel comfortable around me. I detest having to try to make people feel comfortable around me. Seems like that's something that, being 6'4", 6'3", always seems to happen.
Never happened to me.
5'16".
But
Look at
that's a whole other different podcast subject to talk about. You know, making people feel comfortable is one of the things, I guess, in the American caste system. Being black is one of those things, when you come into a room, as I was saying earlier, that I have to look for as well too. It's that I believe we did talk maybe last year during the podcast. We talked about code switching, where I go into a room and I got a code switch, and I can sit back and I got to walk into a room, make a quick instant judgment. Oh, okay, there's some black guys. Hey, what's up, man? Hey, you know, walk into a room and there's me and the only white guys. Hey, how you doing today, sir? How you doing? I'm Samuel Davis. Hey, how you doing? You know, I have to code switch. I have to make everyone feel comfortable for me. I can't just come in and be who I am. And that is very frustrating to me. I get tired of that. I really get tired of that. And it's a difficult thing, because you have to try to make the environment. I mean, you want to make the environment so that you can learn something, because if you come with the wrong attitude or demeanor, it shuts down. If you come in, I hear the guy when I'm walking through, there's MAGA talking, and I come in, hey, you're a liar. Hey, man, they're gonna turn around and look, and the whole demeanor of the whole environment changes. And so that's where code switching comes in. But with all that being said, I know, Robin, I know you got something that you can say, make a comment about, because we're very short for a couple of minutes before we get ready to shut down. What do you have to say about what we were just discussing when it comes to code switching, and it comes to making people feel comfortable? Obviously,
well, code switching goes both ways. You walk into a room and there's a bunch of white guys in there. You have to make them feel comfortable, and you feel the pressure to make them feel comfortable. Don't forget that they feel the pressure to make you feel welcome. Because if another white guy walked in there, they'd probably fucking ignore him. But
you really
they're
think
afraid.
You really think that they have to make?
Oh, because we've done it. I don't have to think it. I've been in a room full of white guys, and another white guy walks in, and we barely look up, right? But if a black guy walks in, if you don't make some kind of overt effort to make him feel welcome, you're gonna think that you look exclusionary, right? And so to help you with this idea of the code switching, I would submit, don't forget that it goes both ways, right? People have to make you feel like they don't want to look like they're racists, right? I don't have to worry about looking like a racist about a bunch of when I'm around a bunch of other white guys. But if there's a black guy there, I have to worry about that. That's in the top of my mind. I've got to sit there and go, okay, let's make sure we invite him. If he was white, I wouldn't have invited him. I wouldn't have extended an invitation. I wouldn't have asked about his kids. I wouldn't have pretended to think that he's a doctor, right? So that goes both ways. And that's just part of the environment that we live in and we've created. But at the same time, let's not forget that a great part of that is just basically good manners, right? You're a big man. You walk in. It doesn't matter what color you are, white, green, blue, yellow, whatever the fuck. You walk into a room full of women. You got to make them feel comfortable. White guys have to do that too, right? Mexicans have to do that. Everybody has to do that. Let's not forget that when you sit there and you think of yourself as kind of downtrodden, you can always find somebody is the next layer down, who's even less so, who's even lower on the caste system. You can go to India and feel real caste system, where it's like you were born to clean sewers with no PPE, and that's where you're going to die. That's what you were born to do, and you'll never come out of that. We know by your last name that's who and what you're going to be for the rest of your life. Sure. And like, oh, it's illegal now. Yeah, racism is illegal in America too. That don't mean it's gone, right? Sure. The honest conversations are necessary. People need to see each other. The other thing I would say that we talked about changing minds is literature. We need to read more. We need to read those stories. Maya Angelou was once asked, an interviewer told Maya Angelou one time, "I'll never be able to understand the Black experience." And then she threw her hands up and said, "Well, then what the fuck do you think I'm writing for? I ain't writing for other Black folks. They already know it sucked." Right? Wow. This is for you, white man, so that you can understand my experience. That's what literature is for. And so I'll give a plug to the latest book I read. It's Only My Face Was Smiling. And it's a pretty goddamn good book. So if you guys get a chance to read Denise's book, read it, because it'll give you insight to people who are even more downtrodden than you think you are.
Wow. That's what I'm talking about. Great way to close it out there, Robin. I appreciate that. Well, let's go ahead and close out with this then. As you wrap up today's conversation, I hope we leave with more than just answers. I hope we leave with something to think about. Silence isn't always weakness. Speaking isn't always courage. Sometimes wisdom is knowing when to listen. Sometimes courage is knowing when to speak. But perhaps the greater question isn't simply whether we speak or stay silent. It's whether our choice is helping build the kind of family, workplace, community, and world we want to live behind. If today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or made you reflect on your own life, then we've accomplished exactly what we set out to do. Remember, meaningful change rarely begins with someone else. It usually begins with one honest conversation, one courage decision, and one person willing to take the first step. Thank you to our panel for your openness, honesty, and willingness to share your experiences. And thank you to everyone watching and listening. We appreciate you spending time with us. Until next time, keep uplifting ourselves, keep uplifting each other, and keep uplifting our community.